In the 1960s, just for fun, people used to see how many people they could fit into a Volkswagen Beetle. Well, I don't know if that was fun or not. It reminds me a little too much of getting on an airline. It may be good etiquette to keep your elbows and knees inside your seat, but for many of us, it's not an option. And that goes for theaters and like this, football stadiums, and even cars. I have a lot of friends who can't even get into my car. And then what about apparel? Have you ever tried to buy a pair of pants where you couldn't get the waist and the hip to both fit you at the same time, right? Or a shirt where you couldn't get the shoulders and the sleeves to fit you? We've been measuring people for centuries. So why are we still having all these fit problems? Is it because I'm too short, or you're too tall, or we're all getting too fat? Or is it because the airline just wants to cram more people onto the plane so they can make more money? I don't think so. I would like to propose to you that the real reason is designers, engineers, and manufacturers are being misled by the wrong information, the wrong statistics, and the wrong methods. And they trust these methods, so they don't check to see if they're hitting their target market, if they're actually fitting the people they want to fit, so they don't know that they have a problem. So I'm going to show you a few examples today of what I mean. When I first started in this business, I thought that we designed for the average person, but that's wrong. A lot of people still believe that. But in 1952, Gilbert Daniels demonstrated that there is no average person. There's no one who's average in every way. He did a study. He wanted to find a few men who were average for every one of his measurements. He had 4,000 men. He'd measured about 150 measurements. And he said, if they're in the middle 1/3, I'll consider them to be average, to be medium size, right? I just want to find 1 or 2 guys that are average for every measurement. After 15 measurements, there was no one left. There was no one in all those 4,000 men who was average for all 15 measurements. What that means is we are all combinations of small, medium, and large body proportions, right? Just like these 3 blue boxes I'm showing in the diagram. I'm calling them subjects. Each of those subjects is small, medium, and large, but in different ways. The table to the right shows you their measurements and the calculation of their average. The pinkish box there is supposed to be a cube. It's a little stretched. Represents that average. And what do you see? If I made a garment or a product to fit that average, it would be too small for every single one of the subjects, right? The subjects for whom the average was calculated. This means that if we made our products to fit the average person, it might not fit anybody, right? So it should be no surprise that we have all those medium, small, and extra small garments on the clearance racks at the stores, right? Those manufacturers did not hit their target market, and they don't know they missed it. Once people realize that there's some issues with averages, they move on to percentiles. Percentiles are statistics that tell you the relative size. So for example, for hip breadth sitting, the 99th percentile tells you the point at which 99% are smaller and 1% are larger. It's very common for people to use the first percentile female or small female and the 99th percentile male or large male, design for those two, and assume that they'll fit all the people who fit in between, because men are larger than women, right? Right? So let's walk through an example. Say we wanted to design a football stadium, right? And we want to know how wide to make the seats. So if we make it wide enough, then we don't have to worry about it being too small. So we just look at the large end. So we'll select the 99th percentile male hip breadth sitting. That would be about 19 inches, as you can see on the chart here. Well, let's just for giggles look at women. All right? Oops, women aren't smaller than men. And it's not even a small amount. Women, the 99th percentile female, is almost 3 inches larger in hip breadth sitting than the male. The problem is the manufacturer or the person designing that seat put their confidence in that 19-inch hip breadth sitting because that was the 99th percentile male. They often don't check to see if the large woman would fit, right? Sometimes they don't believe me when I tell them the women are that much bigger. Okay. How much bigger is that? All right, the 19 inches is about the 91st percentile for the female population. That means almost 1 out of every 10 seats would be too small, right? And that affects not only that person sitting in that seat, it's too small for them, but it affects the people on both sides of that person too. So that can end up being a whole lot of people in your stadium or your theater that are feeling uncomfortable and a little tightly squeezed, as I'm sure some of you are kind of experiencing right now. So let's look at, a lot of times people don't believe me, so let's look at some pictures of a man and a woman who have these hip breadth sittings. This picture is actually 2 3D scan data sets overlaid on top of each other. So these dots, the green dots represent the copy or the data from a male with a 19-inch hip breadth sitting. The red dots are a female with the 21.9-inch hip breadth sitting. And you can see the woman does have quite a bit larger hip, and she's a little bit shorter and shorter in the height and the shoulders. But then when you're looking at this, you realize, hey, there's some green arms, male arms sticking out beyond that female hip breadth. Why were we using hip breadth? That's the wrong measurement. That's not the widest part of the body when you're seated. Men are broader across the shoulders, right? And just as there's no person who's average in every way, there's no person who's 99th percentile in every way. This man is 99th percentile in hip breadth, but he's not 99th percentile in shoulder breadth sitting. What is shoulder breadth? The male shoulder breadth sitting, 99th percentile, is 23 1/3 inches. We're now 4 1/3 inches larger than that 19 inches we were going to make our seat in the first place. The problem is we are looking at all of these other things, but manufacturers often don't. In fact, many of them don't have any 3D scans of thousands of subjects that they can use to visualize the whole situation. So they never check the fit to see if they hit their target market, and they often miss their target market. So it should be no surprise that your arm and shoulder gets hit by the cart on the airline, the beverage cart, every time they come down the aisle. One way that a lot of people use to check fit is they use CAD models, computer-aided design models. And computer-aided design models are really, really useful tools for design. Don't get me wrong. But they're just really lousy tools for checking whether something fits or not, because they have no information or no data about the relationship between the product and the body. There's no fit information. And those computer models will do anything you ask them to do, even the impossible. You can stack them like firewood or put 47 of them into a Volkswagen Beetle, and they'll still be comfortable, and it may look like fit, but it's not real fit. To get real fit, you need to use real people, and you need to use prototypes and mock-ups of your product. The best way to check fit is called fit mapping. With fit mapping, you take real people and prototypes or mock-ups of your products, and you determine, who or which body sizes and shapes get a fit and who doesn't get a fit. And it's important that you do both, because what that tells you is where the cutoff line is. Who am I fitting and who am I not fitting? And then you can use that information to adjust your product to make sure you fit your target market and you're not wasting sizes or spaces or adjustments on people who don't exist. So, but very, very few people actually do fit mapping. It's not a commonly done thing. I've done now for more than 3 decades lots of fit testing of all types of products, from helmets, boots, uniforms, and here is a couple of pictures where I'm assisting my colleague Dr. Greg Zahner doing accommodation mapping of an aircraft. You probably don't recognize me because it's been a few years. But here I'm the recorder in the one picture. Greg Zahner's actually in the cockpit there, and I'm this test subject in the cockpit in the other picture. So in all the products that I've looked at, there has not been a single product, let me repeat, no products, 0 products that actually fit the people they were designed to fit. Every single one had wasted sizes or space and were not hitting their target market. Until we did fit mapping and adapted it, they were missing the opportunity to sell more product. So my message today is the only way they're going to learn that they have a fixable problem, that they have a fit problem, is if we speak up. And they want to know, because that's going to mean they're not going to waste money on things that sizes for people that don't exist, and they're going to sell more product to the target market that they wanted to fit in the first place. So speak up, don't be afraid. They need to know, and maybe together we can make a difference. Thank you.